All right, guys, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. You got me and Derek here, and we're going to try a little bit different format today. Where instead of going over all of the games, we're going to go over each game one at a time so we can get a little bit more info, and at the same time, the episodes won't be so long. And man, did we have a crazy week of football so far? We're going to start it off with the Ravens and Titans both going to London. Um, the Ravens won 24-16. The over did not hit. Go figure in a Ravens-Titans game. Baltimore covered the 4.5-point spread. And it looked like a lot of Ravens games, if we're being honest. The Ravens kind of dominated the first half. I think the Titans only had like 56 total yards in that first half. And they kind of let them get back to the game in the second half. There was a lot of penalties, a big Derrick Henry run. But for the most part, that was about it for the Tennessee offense. Lamar Jackson did have a good game. He's got 18.1 fantasy points. Can't really be too mad about that, especially if you look at the performances from other quarterbacks around the league. Yesterday, it was kind of bleak. Lamar, he had, 21 of 30 passing, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 13 attempts for 62 yards. Something that we talked about was once J.K. Dobbins went down, it was probable that you will see like at least 10 carries a week out of Lamar Jackson. And so far, we've been seeing something around that. He's been very accurate so far. His interception, like the last one in the Steelers game, it wasn't the greatest throw and wasn't the greatest route by Odell. This one against the Titans, I don't know if it was a miscommunication between him and Rashad Bateman, but he threw the ball. Rashad looked kind of lost, threw his hands up, and it is what it is. As far as the running backs, it's kind of what we talked about. It's going to go back and forth. And realistically, unless one of them finishes with a touchdown, you're not going to see the greatest fantasy day. Gus had 16 attempts for 41 yards, caught 1 pass for 12 yards, which was nice to see for Gus since he usually does not catch passes. And this one, he played 62% of the snaps, got 44 of the offensive snaps. And I guess Gus is more reliable as far as if you want to go for a running back in the Baltimore backroom. He's not really going to be the pass catcher. That's more Justice Hill's role. Even with that, finishing 8 carries more than Justice Hill, Justice had 35 yards on the ground and he caught 3 passes. So 6.3 points in a PPR format for Gus and 6.5 for Justice. Like I said, it's kind of pick one. If one of them gets in the end zone, you're going to be happy. If they don't, this is kind of what you're going to be looking at. You got anything to touch on for the running backs or Lamar?
I mean, Lamar's an obvious start. I'm starting Lamar every week, and you touched on it. When J.K. went down, Lamar took a lot of those rushing opportunities, and it's just, unless one of them really differentiates themselves from the other, which I just don't see happening between Justice and Gus, it's just tough to start one of them if the other one is healthy and playing. Like you said, you're relying on them getting in the end zone, but you probably have a better option of someone who's going to be a more solidified running back in their backfield. So it's tough to commit to one of those guys.
Yeah, it is. And they're like good options to have as depth pieces because if someone were to go down, for example, last week I had they ruled out Jahmyr Gibbs kind of last second, and I had no real option to pivot to. So I ended up having to go to Latavius Murray, who got me 1.5 points. I think Justice and Gus might be better options for situations like that if you need an emergency pivot, because there's going to be some volume for Gus. He could probably get you at least 6-7 points in a week. Justice might catch some passes. So, and they're not really going to burn you, but they're not league or week winning type guys. Moving on, I mean, Mark Andrews had a good day for a tight end. I'd say a fairly pedestrian day for him. Finished with 4 catches on 6 targets for 69 yards. Didn't score a touchdown. So 10.9 PPR points. You know what you're going to get with Mark. Some days are going to be booms. He's going to give you these weeks, which 10 points out of a tight end isn't bad, but it is Mark Andrews, and you drafted him likely in the 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah.
So you're kind of wanting a little bit more production than that. And then the rest of the receivers, it's kind of what we talked about. I mean, Zay Flowers is the guy. He was on the field for 89% of the snaps, which is far more than any other Ravens receiver, at least 30%. The next closest guy was Nelson Aguilar at 52% of the snaps. So I don't think there's really too much to talk about Zay. We're kind of figuring out who and what he is in that offense. To me, he's at least an every week flex option. If not, I feel comfortable putting him in at a wide receiver spot. He's getting a large percent of the targets. He got more targets than Mark Andrews. I'm really liking Zay. I think this is the second week in a row he got more targets than Mark.
Yeah.
But the other thing, go ahead, Derek.
No, I was just gonna say, like, in that Ravens receiving room, obviously you starting Mark Andrews every week, and you're starting Zay Flowers. I just don't feel comfortable starting. I mean, Aguilar has those bust or boom weeks, but he also has the bust weeks, so it's like the only two I feel safe starting, Zay and Mark.
Yeah. And I think like Nelson is kind of solidifying himself as, I guess, the wide receiver too.
Yeah.
But if we're being realistic, the Ravens aren't averaging more than 200 pass yards a game. So it's not really like we talk about the hypothetical pie, and he's not getting the pie isn't very big. So even if the slice he's getting is big, it's, what are we really going to do with that?
Yeah.
I think his best game has been like 6 catches for 40 yards or something. So he's a decent emergency option if you really need it, just because he's shown some production, but not really someone I'm interested in. And obviously Rashad Bateman, you are no longer rostering. Odell, you're starting to see some flashes from him. He had a nice catch and run for about 30 or so yards. And I think it's one of those things he'll probably ramp up as the season goes on. Still not someone that I'm very interested in rostering in a redraft league.
Yeah.
But as far as the Ravens side of the ball, that's all I've got. If you have anything you want to touch on.
No, I made my comments. I feel like I'm good on the Baltimore side.
And for Tennessee, it was the Derrick Henry show, you could say. And even in Derrick Henry's clear best performance of the year so far, 12 attempts, 97 yards, 1 touchdown, caught 2 passes for 16, finished with 19.3 PPR points. He's still only playing 53% of the snaps.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that it's going to be consistent throughout this season. He's not going to always be on the field like we've seen Derrick Henry. We're 6 weeks into the season now, and this hasn't changed. In fact, it's pretty obvious at this point. They like having Tyjae out there. Tyjae is a much better pass catcher. In fact, we saw Tyjae on a 48-yard catch and run at the end of that game.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry cannot move like that at this point. If he's moving in a straight line, picking up steam, yeah. But the little cuts and jukes and how shifty Spears is, obviously they have very different skill sets. And even then, he's still getting rush attempts. Tyjae got 4 for 15, not great. Like I said, only the 1 catch for 48. He finished with 7.3 PPR points. So, but honestly, it's more than guys. I'd say I might trust Tyjae more than the Ravens running backs. If you need a guy to pivot to real quick, just because he's been in the game and the Titans have shown they like throwing the ball to him. He only got 1 target and 1 catch, but obviously you get 48 yards on a catch and run. You're showing what they drafted you for.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to continue to use him. He scored the touchdown in the previous week. I think he's going to get usage. So he's not a guy that I like rostering him a lot. As I've said before, especially if you have Derrick Henry, if you don't have Tyjae Spears, I don't know what you're doing, because if Henry were to go out, that's such an obvious, like, he's going to be the RB1.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go to anyone else. But good Lord, the Tennessee passing offense, we know what it is. We know what it's been. This week, it was, if not for that 48-yard catch and run from Spears, it would have been so much worse. Tannehill did not finish this game. He only played 61% of the snaps before he hurt his ankle, and Malik Willis had to come in. But even when Tannehill was in, he was 8 for 16, 1 interception, 76 yards. They were fortunate enough that the refs clearly wanted to keep that a game in London because there were a lot of bad flags that kept the offense on the field. And even with that, they couldn't do too much. I mean, outside of the 2 chunk plays they had, that 64-yard run from Derrick Henry and that 48-yard catch from Spear, that was a large chunk of their offense. And granted, this Ravens defense is, you could go to say elite. They're among the top right now. They're only giving up 15.2 points a game. They're only giving up 97 rush yards. So it's like it was going to be tough sledding. We knew that coming in. But hell, even D-Hop, man, like it, 1 catch on 5 targets for 20 yards. This is coming after his best performance of the year. I mean, we know the Ravens have a good defense all around, even in the past. They just got Marlon back. Marcus Williams is out there, so on and so forth. But it's hard to say with D-Hop because, I mean, a week after he has his best game of the year, over 100 yards, over 10 targets, coming into this, it was like, okay, I don't know. It's just hard. It's hard to navigate this Tennessee offense. The only one that you're remotely thinking about, like Chigakonkwo is off my radar at this point. They don't throw the ball enough. Anyone else? Akina Westbrook. Treylon Burks hasn't been playing football, so obviously, what are you going to do with him?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just hard because this is DeAndre Hopkins, and you don't want to say, like, I don't know if I could really start him, but at this point, I don't know if I could really start him. It's super matchup dependent. And that's really all I got for this one.
I mean, if Tannehill does miss time, with Malik Willis, I really don't like the D-Hop start. That is just insanely scary to me. Derrick Henry, I guess, is the most trusted, but you just talked about, he finished with 90-something yards and 64 of them were on that run.
On one run.
We're just seeing Derrick Henry when he's defenses are figuring him out. They're hitting him low, and he is losing the capability to shed those. And a lot of the time you're seeing when he gets hit low behind the line of scrimmage, he is starting to go down. And those big runs are just getting further and further apart from what we've seen from him.
They're few and far in between because it's like the one that he broke on was a trick play. He would lined up in a wildcat, took the snap, faked an end around, and then took off. Like I said, once he gets ahead of steam, great. But at this point, you're playing the Tennessee Titans. Why the hell am I not going to stack the box? They don't throw the ball.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't even really know what to do with that. That's what I mean. It's very hard. And we got to figure out if Ryan Tannehill is going to be missing time, because you want to say, like, oh, if Malik Willis is in, that should bump up, Derrick Henry, maybe even Tyjae Spears. But to me, that says, oh, your quarterback who can throw the ball and doesn't have a career completion percentage of 50% isn't going to be playing. You guys are going to have Malik Willis in?
Yeah.
We're stacking the box every play. I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, Derrick Henry, outside of getting a touchdown, it's going to be rough. You can't not start Derrick Henry. Luckily for everybody, they're going on a bye next week, so maybe Tannehill has that time to heal up and get back out there, because without him, I don't think I feel very safe or comfortable starting anybody in the Titans offense.
Yeah, 100% agree with it. 100%.
The kicker's good.
Nick Folk is good.
Nick Folk has made 70 field goals inside of the 40. So, I mean, hey, if you want to pick, at this point, I'm actually considering pivoting to Nick Folk over Jake Moody. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's really all I got. The stars of this game were Justin Tucker and Nick Folk, to put it simply.
Yeah, simple enough. No, simple.
Yeah, that's all we got for this one. Stay tuned for the next game, guys.
Till then.